Marcus Chen heard the steel walls groan under impossible pressure, twisting like tin foil as massive claws punched through reinforced alloy. The creature he'd been feeding scraps to for months, the silent shadow chained in the darkness, was no helpless prisoner. Guards screamed as their weapons bounced harmlessly off its hide. Blood painted the corridor walls. The beast that terrified an entire star system now stood between Marcus and freedom, its glowing eyes fixed on him with something that looked almost like loyalty. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The Tarsius mining colony sat like a festering wound on the edge of civilized space, a chunk of rock valuable only for the rare metals buried in its core. Marcus had been there for 3 months, though it felt like years. The transport that brought him had descended through clouds of toxic gas into a world of eternal twilight. Surface temperatures could freeze blood in seconds, forcing all operations underground. They called it a rehabilitation facility for corporate criminals, but everyone knew better. Tarsius was where the Galactic Commerce Authority sent people to disappear. No trials, no lawyers, just a one-way ticket to a place that didn't officially exist. Marcus's crime had been exposing his company's illegal weapons trading with separatist factions. His reward was a cell 50 meters below the planet's surface. The mining levels were a maze of tunnels carved by automated borers decades ago. Prisoners worked 16-hour shifts, extracting ore while breathing recycled air that tasted of metal and despair. Guards in powered armor watched from elevated platforms, shock batons crackling with blue energy. The rule was simple: meet your quota or lose your food rations. Marcus had always been observant, a trait that served him well as a corporate whistleblower. It didn't take long to notice the patterns others missed. Guards avoided certain tunnels after the night shift. Security drones malfunctioned near the lower levels. Sometimes, late at night, when the machinery went quiet, he heard sounds that didn't belong, deep rumbles that made his bones ache. The first time he saw the creature was an accident. A shaft collapse had forced him to take a detour through the abandoned sections, areas marked with radiation warnings that kept most prisoners away. The Geiger counter on his belt clicked steadily but stayed within safe limits. The warnings were fake, meant to hide something else. The chamber he stumbled into defied the prison's utilitarian architecture. Walls of polished black stone reflected his helmet light in strange patterns. Heavy chains, thick as his arm, hung from the ceiling, their ends disappearing into a pool of darkness at the room's center. The air felt different here, charged with an energy that made his skin prickle. Movement in the shadows made him freeze. Something massive shifted, chains clanking with a sound like distant thunder. Marcus's light caught glimpses of dark scales, each the size of his hand, and eyes that glowed with a pale inner fire. The creature didn't attack. It simply watched him with an intelligence that made his assumption of animal feel dangerously wrong. He should have run, should have reported it to the guards, and earned himself maybe an extra food pack. Instead, Marcus found himself returning the next night with half his dinner ration. The NutriPaste tasted like cardboard anyway. He set it on the ground and backed away slowly. The creature emerged partially from the darkness, enough for Marcus to see it wasn't like anything in the xenobiology texts he'd studied. 6 limbs ending in claws that could punch through steel. A head that seemed to shift between reptilian and insectoid features depending on the angle. Most disturbing were the surgical scars crisscrossing its hide, evidence of extensive modification. It ate with surprising delicacy, using one clawed hand to scoop the paste while keeping its eyes fixed on Marcus. When finished, it retreated to the shadows without a sound. Marcus left feeling like he'd passed some kind of test. The feeding became a nightly ritual. Marcus would finish his shift, grab his rations, and make the dangerous journey to the hidden chamber. The creature began showing itself more fully, revealing a body built for both power and speed. Sometimes it would tilt its head when he spoke, as if understanding his words. "You're not from around here either, are you?" Marcus said one night, settling against the wall at what he'd learned was a safe distance. "Let me guess. Another guest of our gracious hosts?" The creature made no sound, but its eyes tracked his movements with unnerving focus. Up close, Marcus could see the collar around its neck. a band of alien metal covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. More restraints bound its limbs, though they seemed redundant given the massive chains. "I'm Marcus, by the way. Marcus Chen, former compliance officer turned political prisoner. And you are?" He laughed at his own joke. "Right, the strong silent type. That's fine. I talk enough for both of us." Weeks passed in this strange companionship. Marcus learned to read the creature's body language, the way its scales shifted color with mood, how its eyes would narrow when guards passed too close to their secret. He shared stories of Earth, of blue skies and oceans, things that seemed like fantasy in this underground hell. "You know where I miss most?" he said one night, breaking a piece of stale bread he'd saved from lunch. "Rain. Just standing outside and feeling it on your face. Probably sounds stupid to something like you." The creature moved closer than ever before, its massive head hovering just outside arm's reach. For the first time, Marcus heard it make a sound, a low rumble that might have been acknowledgement or sympathy. In that moment, he realized how desperately lonely they both were. The beating came without warning. Marcus was returning from his shift when guards surrounded him in a narrow corridor. Someone had noticed his missing rations, put together his nighttime disappearances. They wanted to know what he was hiding. "Just eating alone," Marcus said, hands raised peacefully. "Sometimes I need space from the other prisoners." The first shock baton caught him in the ribs, dropping him to his knees. Electricity coursed through his body, every muscle spasming. The guards laughed as they took turns, professional sadists who'd perfected the art of causing maximum pain without permanent damage. "Think you're special, Earth Boy?" The lead guard's voice was muffled by his helmet. "Think the rules don't apply to you?" Marcus tried to curl into a ball, protecting his vital organs as boots and batons rained down. His ribs cracked. Blood filled his mouth. Through the haze of pain, he thought about the creature waiting in the dark, probably wondering why he hadn't come. They dragged him back to his cell, dumping him on the metal floor like garbage. Marcus lay there for hours, every breath agony, wondering if this was how it ended. Not from the dangerous work or toxic atmosphere, but because he'd shown kindness to something that couldn't even speak. When he finally managed to stand, Marcus knew he had to make one last journey. The creature deserved to know why he'd stopped coming. Moving through the tunnels took forever, each step sending spikes of pain through his body. Twice he had to stop and vomit blood. The chamber was silent when he arrived. Marcus collapsed just inside the entrance, his legs finally giving out. "Hey," he whispered to the darkness. "Sorry I'm late." The creature emerged immediately, moving with a speed that belied its size. It circled him once, twice, nostrils flaring as it scented his blood. Marcus watched through swollen eyes as something changed in its posture, scales shifting from dark gray to deep red. "It's okay," Marcus said, coughing up more blood. "Not your fault. They found out about us, about this place." The creature's eyes blazed brighter, and for the first time, Marcus felt the true weight of its attention. It wasn't just intelligent, it was ancient, carrying memories of battlefields across a dozen star systems. The surgical scars weren't from experimentation. They were from weapons integration. The rumble that emerged from its throat was nothing like the gentle sounds it had made before. This was rage, distilled to its purest form, a promise of violence that made Marcus's primitive human brain scream warnings. The creature turned toward the chamber entrance, muscles bunching under its scales. "Wait," Marcus tried to say, but the word came out as a bloody whisper. "Don't." The creature paused, looking back at him with something like regret. Then, it opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth designed for tearing through armor, and screamed. The sound was beyond hearing, a psychic blast that shattered Marcus's perception. In that scream was encoded its true name, its purpose, its fury at seeing the one being who'd shown it, kindness broken and bleeding. The chains that had held it for years snapped like threads. The collar around its neck, designed to suppress its higher functions, cracked and fell away. The creature that emerged from those restraints was no prisoner. It was a weapon of war, banned by treaties across known space, a living engine of destruction that had been locked away for the safety of entire civilizations. Marcus watched in awe and terror as it approached the chamber's reinforced door. Claws that could rend starship armor pierced the metal like paper. With a single motion, it tore the door from its frame, sending it spinning into the corridor beyond. Alarms began wailing throughout the complex. Red emergency lights bathed everything in hellish illumination. The creature looked back at Marcus one more time, and he saw in its eyes not a beast, but a soldier who'd finally found something worth fighting for. "Go," Marcus whispered, managing a weak smile. "Give them hell." The creature disappeared into the corridor. Seconds later, screams echoed through the tunnels. The wet sound of tearing flesh mixed with the whine of energy weapons. Guards who'd terrorized prisoners for years now faced something from their nightmares, a genetically engineered predator that treated their powered armor like tissue paper. Marcus tried to stand but couldn't. His body was shutting down, internal bleeding finally catching up. He closed his eyes, ready for the end, when he felt himself being lifted. The creature had returned, its scales now painted with gore. It cradled him with surprising gentleness, one massive arm supporting his weight. "No," Marcus protested weakly. "Leave me. You need to run." The creature's response was to secure him more firmly against its chest. It moved through the corridors with fluid grace, stepping over dismembered guards and shattered security drones. Marcus caught glimpses of the carnage, walls painted with blood, weapons crushed to scrap. They reached the main elevator shaft, just as reinforcements arrived. A full squad in military-grade combat armor opened fire with plasma rifles. The creature shielded Marcus with its body, energy bolts splashing harmlessly off its scales. Then it charged. What followed was less a fight than an execution. The creature moved faster than anything that size had a right to, claws cleaving through armor and flesh with equal ease. One guard managed to activate a sonic disruptor before his head was removed from his shoulders. The weapon's shriek made Marcus's ears bleed, but the creature barely flinched. When the last guard fell, the creature accessed the elevator controls with a competence that suggested it had always understood the technology around it. As they rose toward the surface, Marcus felt its body temperature dropping, some kind of biological adaptation to the frozen wasteland above. "You are always awake," Marcus realized, his voice barely audible over the elevator's hum. "All that time, watching, learning, waiting for something. Why me?" The creature looked down at him, and Marcus thought he saw something almost like amusement in its alien features. He couldn't speak in any language humans would understand, but its actions were clear enough. In all its years of imprisonment, Marcus was the first to see it as more than a monster or weapon. The elevator opened to chaos. The surface facility was in full alert, guards scrambling to respond to the breach below. They'd expected escaping prisoners, not a bioweapon that could shrug off military-grade firepower. The creature carved a path through them like a force of nature. Outside, the toxic atmosphere that would kill an unprotected human in minutes had no effect on the creature's engineered biology. It bounded across the frozen landscape, with Marcus clutched to its chest, covering kilometers with each leap. Behind them, the mining complex burned, its defenses overwhelmed by something they were never designed to contain. Marcus faded in and out of consciousness, his body finally succumbing to trauma. In his lucid moments, he marveled at the alien vistas flashing by. Crystalline formations that sang in the wind. Canyons carved by rivers of liquid methane. A sky where 3 moons danced between aurora displays that put Earth's northern lights to shame. When he woke fully, they were in a cave system, far from the prison. The creature had built a fire using some chemical process Marcus didn't understand, the flames burning bright without oxygen. Automated medical systems, clearly looted from the prison, worked to repair his damaged body. "You saved me," Marcus said, his voice stronger thanks to whatever drugs the med system had pumped into him. "But now what? They'll hunt us both. You're a weapon they can't afford to let run free." The creature regarded him steadily, then did something unprecedented. It spoke. Not with vocal cords, which it lacked, but by manipulating the air itself, creating vibrations that formed words. "Free," it said, the sound like wind through ancient trees. "Both free." Marcus laughed despite himself, the sound echoing off cave walls. Free to do what? Hide forever? You know they'll never stop looking. The creature moved closer, its massive form radiating heat from the fire. You show kindness. Rare. Valuable. Each word was carefully formed, as if it was remembering how to communicate with lesser beings. I was Cathara. War form. Banned. Imprisoned. Forgotten. Cathara, Marcus repeated, the name feeling strange on his tongue. Is that your name or your designation? Both. Neither. The creature, Cathara, settled beside him. I choose. First time. Choose to protect. Choose to follow. You. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. He wasn't just sitting next to an escaped prisoner. He was bonded to a living weapon that had chosen him as its commander. The authorities wouldn't just hunt them. They'd mobilize entire fleets. You know what this means? Marcus asked. We'll be fugitives for the rest of our lives. Always running, always fighting. Cathara's response was to produce something from a pouch Marcus hadn't noticed before. It was a datapad, military grade, probably taken from one of the dead guards. The screen showed star charts, jump points, systems beyond the Galactic Commerce Authority's reach. Many places, Cathara said. Hidden places. Safe places. We go. Marcus took the pad, scrolling through the data. Pirate havens, neutral zones, unexplored systems where two fugitives could disappear. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it beat dying in a prison mine. All right, he said finally. Partners? Cathara extended one clawed hand, the gesture surprisingly human. Marcus shook it carefully, sealing a pact that would reshape his destiny. Outside the cave, searchcraft crisscrossed the toxic sky, their spotlights painting the landscape. They were looking for an escaped prisoner and a rogue bioweapon. They'd never expect them to be allies. As the night deepened, Marcus began planning their escape from Tarsius. The planet's defense grid was formidable, but it was designed to keep people in, not out. With Cathara's combat capabilities and his knowledge of corporate security systems, they might just make it. Tell me about these weapons, Marcus said, studying the schematics on the pad. What exactly did they do to you? Cathara's scales shifted, patterns of light playing across them like memories. Enhanced, modified, improved, made perfect killer, but kept mind. Mistake. Mind remembers. Mind chooses. And you choose freedom. Choose you, Cathara corrected. Freedom means nothing alone. You gave dignity, respect, food when hungry, words when lonely. This, valuable beyond measure. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. In all his years working in corporate compliance, dealing with contracts worth billions, he'd never encountered loyalty this pure. It was humbling and terrifying in equal measure. The med systems beeped, indicating treatment was complete. Marcus sat up carefully, testing his range of motion. His ribs were healed, bruises faded. Whatever tech the prison used on guards was military grade, probably worth a fortune on the black market. We'll need to steal a ship, Marcus said, his mind shifting into planning mode. Something small. Fast. The spaceport's on the other side of the glacier field, but if we time it right. Cathara produced another stolen item, this one making Marcus's eyes widen. It was a security override key, the kind only prison administrators carried. With that, they could walk right through the spaceport's defenses. You've been busy, Marcus said appreciatively. How many guards did you actually kill back there? All who stood between us and freedom. No more, no less. Cathara's tone suggested it would have happily killed more if necessary. They hurt you. This was unacceptable. The casualness of the statement drove home what Marcus was dealing with. Cathara wasn't just dangerous, it was loyal to a fault. In its mind, anyone who threatened Marcus was already dead. They just didn't know it yet. They spent the next few hours preparing. Marcus studied the spaceport layouts, while Cathara scouted the surrounding area. The search patterns were predictable, focused on the mining complex and nearby settlements. No one expected them to head for the heavily guarded spaceport. When Cathara returned, it brought supplies scavenged from an abandoned research station. environmental suits, emergency rations, and most importantly, weapons. Marcus hefted a plasma rifle, checking its charge. "I was never much of a soldier," he admitted. "More of a numbers guy." "You survived Tarsius," Kithara said simply. "You fed stranger in dark. You faced death with dignity. This makes you warrior enough." They set out just before dawn, when the guard shifts changed and surveillance was weakest. Kithara's knowledge of the terrain was encyclopedic, acquired during its years of captivity by listening to guard conversations. They avoided patrols with ease, moving like ghosts across the frozen wasteland. The spaceport came into view as the sun crested the horizon, a sprawling complex of landing pads and maintenance hangars. Ships of various sizes sat waiting, from massive ore haulers to sleek courier vessels. Marcus pointed to a mid-sized transport, the kind used for personnel transfers. "That one. Good range, decent speed, and boring enough not to attract attention." Kithara nodded, then did something that made Marcus's hair stand on end. Its form began to shift, scales rearranging themselves into different patterns. Within moments, it had compressed itself into a shape that could pass for a large human in an environmental suit, though the proportions were still slightly wrong. "Camouflage," it explained, noting Marcus's shocked expression. "Limited time, energy-intensive, but useful." They approached the spaceport's main gate, like they belonged there. The security override key worked perfectly, barriers opening without challenge. Guards barely glanced at them, assuming anyone with that level of clearance must be authorized. The transport ship was even better than Marcus had hoped. Recently fueled, fully stocked, with a jump drive that could take them 3 systems away before anyone noticed it was missing. He settled into the pilot's seat, hands flying over controls as pre-flight sequences engaged. "Strap in," he told Kithara, who was examining the ship's weapons systems with professional interest. "This might get bumpy." The launch was textbook perfect, thrusters lifting them smoothly from the pad. Marcus had expected alarms, pursuit craft, something to mark their escape. Instead, they rose through Tarsius's toxic atmosphere unopposed, the prison complex shrinking behind them. "Too easy," Kithara observed, mirroring Marcus's thoughts. "Way too easy." He was already plotting jump coordinates, fingers dancing over the navigation console. "They're letting us go. Question is why?" The answer came as they cleared the planet's gravity well. A massive warship dropped out of hyperspace directly in their path, weapons powered and targeting locks engaged. The communications system crackled to life. "Stolen transport. This is the GCA Dreadnought Pacifica. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. We have orders to recover you intact, but lethal force is authorized." Marcus's hands froze on the controls. The Pacifica was a ship of the line, carrying enough firepower to vaporize small moons. Their stolen transport was hopelessly outclassed. "Well," he said, trying for humor he didn't feel. "Got any brilliant ideas?" Kithara's response was to stand and move toward the airlock. "Yes. You fly. I fight." "Fight? That's a dreadnought. You can't just—" But Kithara was already cycling through the airlock. Marcus watched in horror as his companion launched itself into space. No suit, no protection, except its engineered biology. The thing that had been a prisoner alongside him revealed its true nature as it grew mid-flight, scales expanding, limbs extending, becoming something that belonged in nightmares of ancient gods. The dreadnought's point defense systems opened fire, filling space with laser bolts and micro-missiles. Kithara danced between them with impossible grace, using pieces of debris as shields and stepping stones. It reached the warship's hull and began tearing through armor plating like it was made of cloth. Marcus didn't waste the distraction. He pushed the transport's engines past their safety limits, racing for the minimum distance needed to engage the jump drive. Behind him, the dreadnought's weapons fell silent as its crew dealt with a more immediate threat. Warning lights flashed across the Pacifica's hull as Kithara burrowed deeper into its structure. Atmosphere vented from multiple breaches. Secondary explosions rippled through the ship as critical systems were methodically destroyed. In minutes, the pride of the GCA fleet was reduced to a burning hulk. Kithara emerged from the wreckage as the jump drive finally charged. It propelled itself through space, with biological thrusters Marcus hadn't known it possessed, catching up to the transport just as reality began to bend around them. Marcus opened the airlock, and his companion tumbled inside as stars elongated into lines of light. They dropped out of hyperspace 3 systems away, in a region of space marked as hazardous on most charts. Ancient minefields from a forgotten war made it too dangerous for regular traffic, but perfect for fugitives with nothing to lose. Cathara had returned to its smaller form, stale, showing the stress of its battle with the dreadnought. Marcus grabbed the medical kit, not sure if any of it would work on alien biology but needing to try. "I'm fine," Cathara said, waving him off. "Regeneration already beginning." "Ship?" "She'll hold together," Marcus confirmed, checking systems. "That was insane. You took on a dreadnought. Alone. And won." "Not alone," Cathara corrected. "Never alone again. You fly, I fight. Together, we survive." They spent the next several days making repairs and planning their next move. The transport's database included information on free ports, where questions weren't asked if you paid in advance. Marcus set course for Nexus Station, a converted asteroid that served as neutral ground for pirates, smugglers, and anyone else operating outside the law. During the journey, Cathara shared more of its history. Created as part of a secret military project, it was one of 12 warforms designed to turn the tide of a conflict that ended before they could be deployed. The peace treaty specifically banned their use, condemning them to imprisonment or destruction. "Others fought," Cathara explained. "Died as warriors. I survived. Waited. Knew someday someone would see more than weapon." "And you found me," Marcus said. "A corporate whistleblower who couldn't even protect himself." "Found each other," Cathara corrected. "Both prisoners. Both more than captors believed. This is why we are free." Nexus Station was everything Marcus expected, and worse. A hollowed-out asteroid spinning in space, its interior a maze of markets, bars, and businesses that would be illegal anywhere else. They docked without incident, the harbormaster more interested in their credit transfer than their identities. Marcus had never felt more out of place. Surrounded by hardened criminals and alien species he could barely identify, he relied on Cathara's presence to discourage trouble. The warform had adopted a humanoid appearance again, though its movement still suggested barely contained lethality. They found lodging in the station's lower levels, a cramped apartment that accepted payment by the day and asked no questions. Marcus collapsed on the narrow bunk, exhaustion finally catching up. They were free, but now what? "We need a plan," he said, staring at the ceiling. "Can't just drift forever. The GCA will keep hunting us." Cathara settled into what passed for a meditation pose, its alien features thoughtful. "Many possibilities. Could offer services as mercenaries. Could seek others like us, build alliance. Could disappear into unknown regions. Or," Marcus said slowly, an idea forming, "we could fight back." Cathara's eyes opened, glowing with interest. "Explain." "I know things. About the GCA, about their illegal operations. The whole reason I ended up in that prison was because I tried to expose them. What if we didn't just run? What if we used what I know and dial? What you can do to hurt them?" "Dangerous," Cathara observed. "They have fleets, armies, resources. They also have secrets, vulnerable points. And now they have an enemy who knows their systems, and another who can tear through their defenses." Marcus sat up, energy returning. "We don't have to win a war, just make them regret ever crossing us." Cathara's form rippled with what Marcus had learned was amusement. "You suggest 2 beings against galactic government. Odds are impossible. Since when has that stopped us?" The warform stood, extending one clawed hand again. "Partners. Where you lead, I follow. Where you point, I destroy. Together, we teach them cost of chains." Marcus grasped the offered hand, sealing their new purpose. They would be more than fugitives, more than survivors. They would be revenge incarnate. A human who knew too much, and a weapon that should never have been freed. The GCA had created its own worst enemy by bringing them together. Now they would learn what happened when kindness met power. when compassion freed AI. Monster, when a simple act of sharing food in the dark set in motion the downfall of an empire. In a shabby apartment on Nexus Station, two unlikely allies began planning a revolution. The galaxy would never be the same. Over the same. Following weeks, Marcus and Cathara established themselves in Nexus Station's underground community. The corporate whistleblower's skills proved surprisingly valuable in a place where everyone had secrets to hide and information to trade. His ability to navigate financial systems and spot regulatory weaknesses made him useful to smugglers and traders looking to move goods without detection. Cathara, meanwhile, built a reputation as an enforcer no one wanted to cross. The Warform took security contracts, always ensuring their clients understood that Marcus was off limits. Word spread quickly about the mysterious pair, the soft-spoken human with his terrifying alien bodyguard. Their apartment became a nerve center for intelligence gathering. Marcus installed encrypted communication arrays, hacked data feeds, and began building a comprehensive picture of GCA operations. What he found confirmed his worst suspicions. The prison at Tarsius was just one node in a vast network of black sites, illegal experiments, and disappeared dissidents. "Look at this," Marcus said one evening, projecting holographic documents into the air. "Shipping manifests for unauthorized weapons tests. All routed through dummy corporations I recognize from my old job." Cathara studied the data with predatory focus. Military applications. Biological weapons. Like me. They're trying to reverse engineer war forms, Marcus realized. That's why the prison was really there. They were studying you. The revelation cast their escape in a new light. The GCA hadn't just been holding a dangerous weapon. They'd been trying to create more. The guards who'd tortured prisoners. The scientists who'd observed from hidden cameras. All part of a larger project to build their own army of living weapons. "Cannot allow," Cathara said simply. "War forms were a mistake. Should not exist. Will not let them make more." Marcus nodded grimly. Their personal vendetta had just become something larger. If the GCA succeeded in creating new war forms without the ethical constraints that held Cathara back, the results would be catastrophic. They began identifying targets, using Marcus's insider knowledge to map vulnerable points in the GCA's operations. Supply depots that fed the black sites, research facilities conducting illegal experiments, financial nodes that funded the whole corrupt system. Their first strike came a month after arriving at Nexus Station, a remote research outpost studying biological weapons. Officially listed as a mining survey station, Marcus had identified it from shipping patterns that matched Tarsius. Too much security for a simple mineral operation. They approached in a stolen stealth shuttle, systems running dark to avoid detection. The facility sat on a barren moon, prefab structures connected by covered walkways. Minimal external defenses, the designers never expecting an attack this far from Bia. Civilization. Guards estimate 20, Cathara observed, studying the tactical display. Scientists unknown number. Possible test subjects in containment. "We go in quiet," Marcus decided. "Download their research data, free any prisoners, then burn it down. No unnecessary killing." Cathara tilted its head. Mercy for those who showed none? We're better than them. That's the point. The infiltration went smoothly at first. Cathara's camouflage abilities let them bypass perimeter sensors, while Marcus hacked the security grid. They entered through a maintenance hatch, moving through sterile corridors that reminded Marcus uncomfortably of Tarsius. The first sign of trouble was the smell, chemicals and something else. Organic decay, poorly masked by industrial cleaners. Marcus's stolen security credentials got them past locked doors into the facility's heart, and what they found there made him physically ill. Specimen containers lined the walls, each holding twisted amalgamations of flesh and metal. Failed attempts to recreate Cathara's perfection, creatures that had died in agony or been terminated when deemed unsuccessful. Some were still alive, malformed things that mewled pitifully in their tanks. "Abominations," Cathara said, its voice carrying an emotion Marcus had never heard before. "Grief. They suffer. Cannot think, cannot choose. Only pain." Marcus was already at the main terminal, downloading everything he could find. Research notes, experiment logs, video files that would serve as evidence of crimes against sentience. The scientists had been thorough in documenting their atrocities. An alarm suddenly shrieked through the facility. Someone had noticed their presence. Guards rushed toward the lab section as blast doors began sealing. Marcus grabbed the data core, stuffing it into his pack. "Time to go loud," he said. Cathara needed no further encouragement. Its form exploded outward, camouflage dropping as it revealed its true nature. The first wave of guards ran directly into a nightmare of claws and rage. Marcus stayed behind his companion, using a stolen rifle to suppress reinforcements, while Cathara carved through opposition. They fought their way to the Sigar containment area where successful test subjects were held. Marcus had expected more warforms, or at least attempted copies. Instead, he found humans, prisoners like himself, taken from GCA facilities and used as experimental subjects. "Get them out," Marcus ordered, already working to override the cell locks. The prisoners stumbled free, many showing signs of surgical modification. One woman had cybernetic implants grotesquely fused to her skull. A man's arm had been replaced with a weapons system he clearly couldn't control. They were Bull. Experiments in human war form hybridization. "Can you run?" Marcus asked them. The woman with implants nodded. "Then waiting for a chance." "Who are you?" "You're ticking out." "Stay close. Don't fall behind." Cathara cleared a path to the shuttle bay, leaving a trail of destruction that would make the facility unusable even if anyone survived. They loaded the freed prisoners into their craft and a larger transport they commandeered. As they lifted off, charges Cathara had planted throughout the structure detonated. The research station became a pillar of fire visible from orbit. Marcus watched it burn with grim satisfaction. One node of the network down, dozens more to go. Back at Nexus Station, they found medical help for the rescued prisoners. Most chose to disappear into the station's underworld rather than risk recapture. The woman with implants, who gave her name as Sarah, decided to stay. "I was a neural engineer before they took me," she explained. "They wanted me to help crack your friend's control systems. When I refused, they made me a test subject instead." "Can the implants be removed?" Marcus asked. "Too integrated now. But I can use them, turn their weapon against them." She looked at Cathara with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Never thought I'd meet an original warform. The things they did trying to copy you?" "Not copy," Cathara corrected. "Pervert. Warforms were balanced. Power with wisdom. Strength with choice. They create only weapons." Sarah's addition to their team proved invaluable. Her engineering knowledge combined with Marcus's corporate intelligence and Cathara's combat capabilities made them far more effective. She modified their equipment, enhanced their ship systems, and began analyzing the data they'd stolen. "This is bigger than we thought," she said one night, projecting a map of known space. Red dots marked GCA black sites, hundreds scattered across dozens of systems. "They're not just trying to recreate war forms. They're building an army." Marcus studied the pattern of facilities. For what? The treaties prevent major conflicts. Who are they planning to fight? "Everyone," Cathara said quietly. "Treaties end. Peace breaks. GCA prepares for war that hasn't started yet." The implications were staggering. The Galactic Commerce Authority wasn't just corrupt, it was preparing for a massive conflict, creating weapons, disappearing dissidents, building a secret military force outside normal oversight. "We can't stop this alone," Marcus realized. "We need allies, other people who've been burned by the GCA." Their recruitment efforts began cautiously. Sarah used her neural implants to tap into underground communication networks, identifying potential allies among hackers, former military personnel, and corporate refugees. Marcus leveraged his financial expertise to trace hidden funding streams, finding others who'd been destroyed for knowing too much. The first to join was Miguel Rodriguez, a former GCA fleet commander who'd refused orders to bombard a civilian settlement. His tactical knowledge proved invaluable as their operations became more complex. Next came Thrix, an insectoid data specialist whose entire hive had been destroyed in GCA mining operations. Within 6 months, their resistance cell had grown to 30 members. They operated from hidden bases scattered across non-aligned systems, striking GCA facilities and liberating prisoners. Each raid brought new intelligence, painting an ever darker picture of the authorities' plans. "They're calling us terrorists," Sarah reported after intercepting a GCA broadcast, "offering bounties for information leading to our capture." Marcus smiled grimly. "Good. Let them know fear for a change." Cathara had evolved beyond mere enforcer to become their strategic planning core. The Warform's tactical genius, freed from the constraints of imprisonment, devised operations that kept them steps ahead of pursuit. It trained their fighters, teaching them to exploit weaknesses in GCA doctrine. Their most ambitious operation targeted a major research facility on Kepler Station. Unlike the remote outposts they'd hit before, this was a core installation with military-grade defenses. The prize was worth the risk: a complete database of the Warform project, including locations of all experimental sites. The assault required precise timing. Miguel's team would create a diversion attacking supply convoys, drawing the station's patrol ships away. Thrix would infiltrate their data networks, creating blind spots in sensor coverage. Sarah would disable internal security systems, while Marcus and Cathara penetrated the most secure areas. Everything went wrong almost immediately. The GCA had anticipated an attack, stationing a hidden fleet in nearby space. As soon as Miguel's ships engaged the convoys, overwhelming reinforcements jumped in. The diversion became a desperate fight for survival. "Abort!" Miguel's voice crackled over comms. "They were ready for us. Get out now." Marcus looked at Cathara, seeing his own determination reflected in alien eyes. "We're too close. Can you buy us time?" The Warform's answer was to shed its humanoid disguise entirely. It burst through the station's hull like a living missile, engaging the GCA fleet single-handedly. Watching through security feeds, Marcus saw his companion become the weapon it was designed to be. Cathara danced through space, using debris and smaller ships as projectiles against larger targets. Its claws, reinforced with energy fields Sarah had developed, cut through armor like butter. A destroyer tried to ram it, only to have Cathara burrow through its hull and emerge from the other side, leaving catastrophic damage in its wake. The distraction worked. While the fleet focused on the immediate threat, Marcus and Sarah reached the secured servers. The data transfer seemed to take forever, progress bars crawling while explosions rocked the station. Through their neural link, Sarah fed updates on Cathara's battle. "It's holding them off. But there are too many. We need to go." "Almost there," Marcus insisted, watching the final files copy. The research data contained horrors beyond imagination. Genetic templates, control mechanisms, deployment strategies for Warform armies. Everything they needed to expose the GCA's plans. A massive impact shook the station. Through the viewports, Marcus saw Cathara grappling with a battlecruiser, literally tearing the ship apart with its bare claws. But even Warforms had limits. Its movements were slowing, scales cracked from sustained fire. "Got it," Marcus said as the transfer completed. "Everyone fall back." Their escape was a running battle through the station's corridors. GCA Marines had breached multiple sections, forcing them to fight for every meter. Sarah's implants let her turn the station's own systems against their enemies, sealing blast doors and venting atmosphere to clear paths. They reached their ship to find Cathara already there, its massive form reduced to something barely larger than human-sized. The Warform was badly injured, scales blackened and cracked, one arm hanging useless. But its eyes still blazed with fierce pride. "Station's reactor is compromised," it reported as they lifted off. "Suggest immediate departure." The explosion that followed was visible from 3 systems away. Kepler Station, pride of the GCA's research network, became an expanding cloud of superheated gas. With it went years of work on the Warform project, though Marcus knew they'd only delayed the inevitable. Back at their base, Sarah worked frantically to save Cathara. The Warform's regenerative systems were overtaxed, struggling to repair damage from weapons specifically designed to kill creatures like it. Marcus sat vigil, remembering another time when their positions had been reversed. "You didn't have to fight the whole fleet," he said quietly. Tithara's eyes flickered open. Yes, did. They stood between us and goal, between you and danger. This is purpose. Your purpose is more than just protecting me now. These people, this cause, they need you too. All extensions of first choice. You showed kindness when none existed. Now that kindness spreads, ripples from single act. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. From sharing food with a chained creature in the dark to leading a revolution against galactic tyranny. Sometimes the smallest gestures had the largest consequences. The stolen data proved even more valuable than expected. Beyond research notes and experimental results, it contained communications between GCA officials and corporate partners. Names, dates, and transactions that exposed the corruption running to the authorities' highest levels. This is it, Sarah said, analyzing the files. Proof they've been planning this for decades. Look at these contracts with defense manufacturers. They're tooling up for war on a scale not seen since the unification conflicts. Marcus began composing their broadcast, weaving together evidence of atrocities, financial crimes, and military preparations. The message would go to every independent news source, planetary government, and citizens' rights organization they could reach. Think they'll believe it? Miguel asked. They'll have to. The evidence is overwhelming. Marcus attached video files from research facilities, testimony from rescued prisoners, financial records showing illegal fund transfers. The question is whether anyone will act on it. The broadcast went out through hundreds of relay stations, impossible to stop or trace back to its source. Within hours, protests erupted on core worlds. Parliamentary debates raged as officials demanded explanations. The GCA's carefully maintained facade began to crack. Their response was predictable: denial, deflection, and escalation. Marcus and his team were branded as terrorists, responsible for the destruction of peaceful research facilities. Rewards for their capture increased tenfold. More troubling, GCA fleets began mobilizing under the pretense of hunting dangerous fugitives. They're accelerating their timeline, Cathara observed, studying fleet movements. Using us as excuse to deploy military assets. Then we need to be more than an excuse, Marcus decided. We need to become a genuine threat. Their operations shifted from exposure to disruption. Supply lines feeding the Warform project were severed. Manufacturing facilities suffered mysterious accidents. Key researchers disappeared, later surfacing in non-aligned space with stories of coercion and threatened families. The resistance grew exponentially. Marcus's broadcast had inspired others to act. Cells formed independently, sharing information and resources through encrypted networks Sarah established. Former GCA personnel defected, bringing inside knowledge and military hardware. One such defector was Captain Diana Reyes, who arrived with an entire corvette and its crew. My daughter was at Kepler Station, she explained. A researcher who tried to blow the whistle on the experiments. They told me she died in a terrorist attack. Your broadcast showed me the truth. The corvette was a game changer. No longer limited to stolen shuttles and converted freighters, they could engage GCA forces on more equal terms. Cathara worked with Diana's crew, teaching them unconventional tactics that maximized their small fleet's effectiveness. Their next major operation targeted the system where it all began, Tarsius. The prison moon had been reinforced since their escape, turned into a fortress and primary training ground for GCA's secret army. Orbital defense platforms, fighter squadrons, and a permanent fleet presence made it nearly impregnable. It's suicide, Miguel argued. We don't have the firepower. We don't need firepower, Marcus countered. We need symbolism. That prison represents everything wrong with the GCA. If we can liberate it, show that nowhere is beyond our reach. Cathara surprised everyone by opposing the plan. Too dangerous. Too many variables. Will not risk you for symbol. It was the first time the Warform had contradicted Marcus directly. The room fell silent, everyone aware of the significance. Marcus met those alien eyes, seeing not subordination but partnership. You're right, he admitted. I'm letting emotion cloud judgment. What do you suggest? Simultaneous strikes, multiple targets, Force them to divide responses. Tarsius falls not to assault, but abandonment. The revised plan was brilliant in its simplicity. They would hit a dozen facilities simultaneously, each strike carefully timed to demand immediate response. GCA forces would have to choose which assets to protect, inevitably leaving some vulnerable. Coordination required every ally they cultivated. Resistance cells received detailed mission parameters through Sarah's secure networks. Defector ships took position near assigned targets. Even civilian protesters were given roles, staging demonstrations to occupy local security forces. The night of the operation, Marcus stood on the bridge of Diana's corvette, watching countdown timers synchronize across the fleet. Kithara stood beside him, fully healed and radiating lethal readiness. "Whatever happens," Marcus said, "I want you to know something. That first night, when you were just a shadow in chains, I saw something everyone else missed. Not a weapon or monster, a person. That's all I've ever seen." Kithara's expression was unreadable. "This is why I chose you. Not for food. For sight. You saw what I had forgotten I was." The timers hit 0. Across a dozen systems, the revolution ignited. Research facilities burned. Supply depots exploded. Communications relays went dark. The GCA's carefully constructed network of control began to unravel. At Tarsius, the plan worked perfectly. As reports of attacks flooded in, the defense fleet received urgent redeployment orders. Ships jumped to protect more valuable assets, leaving the prison moon with a skeleton guard. That's when Marcus struck. They came in fast and hard, Diana's corvette leading a motley fleet of converted freighters and stolen patrol craft. The remaining defenders, mostly older vessels deemed expendable, were overwhelmed in minutes. Ground forces surrendered, rather than face Kithara's wrath. Marcus walked through the prison's corridors, memories flooding back. The cells where he'd suffered. The depths where he'd found Kithara. Everything seemed smaller now, less imposing. He wasn't the same man who'd been dumped here to die. They freed hundreds of prisoners, political dissidents and corporate whistleblowers who'd shared his fate. In the lowest levels, they found something else. A new generation of warforms, created using stolen data from Kithara's genetics. Unlike the originals, these lacked higher reasoning. Bred as pure weapons. "Kill them," Marcus ordered, though it sickened him. "They're not truly alive, just programmed weapons." Kithara performed the executions personally, each death precise and merciful. When finished, the warform stood among the bodies of its corrupted offspring, scales dim with sorrow. This is what they would make of us all. Tools without thought, weapons without choice. The liberation of Tarsius sent shockwaves through civilized space. The GCA's impregnable prison, symbol of their authority, had fallen to a band of rebels. Support for the resistance surged as fence-sitters chose sides. Several planetary governments formally withdrew from GCA treaties. But victory carried a price. The authority abandoned all pretense, declaring martial law across their territories. The shadow fleet they'd been building emerged from hidden bases. Warforms, inferior copies, but still devastatingly effective, were deployed against civilian populations. The revolution Marcus had started was becoming the war the GCA had prepared for. Cities burned. Fleets clashed in the void. The body count rose daily as two visions for humanity's future collided. In quiet moments, Marcus wondered if they'd played into the authorities' hands. Had their resistance provided the excuse for militarization? Were they heroes or unwitting catalysts for disaster? Kithara sensed his doubts. Regret? No, Marcus said firmly. They were always planning this. We just forced them to show their true face early. Maybe that gives people a chance to fight back. The war raged for months. Marcus's forces, now calling themselves the Liberation Front, struck where they could while avoiding major fleet engagements. They couldn't match the GCA's military might, but guerrilla tactics and superior intelligence kept them competitive. The turning point came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, lead scientist on the original Warform project and Kithara's creator, broadcast a message from deep space. Old beyond measure, kept alive by the same technologies that birthed the Warforms, She'd watched in horror as her creations were perverted. "I designed them as guardians," her ancient voice declared. "Protectors with the wisdom to choose their battles. The GCA has created abominations, weapons without conscience. I stand with the Liberation Front. More importantly, I bring gifts." Her gifts were shutdown codes, built into every war form, except the originals. When broadcast, they would render the GCA's copied armies inert. The catch was, they had to be transmitted from within close range, essentially a suicide mission for whoever delivered them. Marcus was studying the technical requirements when Cathara volunteered. "I am only one who can survive approach. Original design includes immunity to shutdown protocols. That's a one-way trip. Their entire fleet will focus on you. Perhaps, perhaps not, perhaps not." The Warform's eyes held infinite calm. Either way, fitting end. Creator's words used by creation's choice. Marcus wanted to object, to find another way, but he recognized the tactical reality. Cathara was right. It was the only plan that might work. The thought of losing his first friend, his constant protector, was almost unbearable. The final battle took place at Sigma Draconis, where the GCA had massed their warform armies for a decisive strike. The Liberation Fleet, everything they could muster, jumped in as a distraction. Marcus commanded from the flagship, watching Cathara's specially modified fighters streak toward the enemy formation. GCA commanders recognized the threat too late. Warforms launched to intercept, but Cathara was the original, the template from which all others descended. It carved through them like a force of nature, Dr. Chen's shutdown codes broadcasting on all frequencies. One by one, the copied warforms went dormant. Multi-billion credit weapons became drifting hulks. The GCA's ultimate advantage evaporated in minutes. Panic spread through their ranks as conventional forces found themselves evenly matched. The battle became a melee, ships tangling at point-blank range. Marcus lost sight of Cathara's fighter in the chaos. Status boards showed massive casualties on both sides. The future of human space hung in the balance. Then, through the carnage, a familiar form appeared on the flagship's hull. Cathara, battered but alive, had abandoned its fighter and crossed the void to reach Marcus. The warform tore through the bridge viewport, atmosphere screaming out before emergency fields activated. "Thought you could fight without me?" it asked, voice carrying impossible warmth. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks. "Thought I'd lost you." "Never. Where you go, I follow. Always." Together, they watched the GCA fleet break and scatter. Without their warforms, facing motivated enemies with nothing to lose, the authorities' forces crumbled. The revolution had become a rout. In the aftermath, as the scale of victory became clear, Marcus found himself thrust into a role he'd never wanted. Leader of the provisional government replacing the GCA, the corporate whistleblower who'd shared food with an alien prisoner, was now helping reshape galactic civilization. Cathara remained at his side, no longer bodyguard but partner in building something better. Warforms were banned again, this time with real enforcement. The prison network was dismantled, its victims compensated. Corporate power was curtailed by new oversight mechanisms. "Think it will last?" Marcus asked one evening, looking out at the stars from their new office. "Nothing lasts forever," Cathara replied philosophically. "But kindness creates ripples. Your act in darkness spreads still. Perhaps that is enough." Marcus smiled, remembering a desperate man sharing meager rations with a chained creature. Such a small gesture, born of loneliness and compassion. Who could have predicted it would topple an empire? Years later, historians would debate the war's origins. They'd analyze economic factors, political tensions, military doctrines. But Marcus knew the truth. It began with recognition of shared suffering, with the radical act of seeing a monster as a person, with food offered freely in the dark. The memorial on Tarsius bore a simple inscription: "To those who showed kindness when none existed, to those who chose freedom over chains, to those who proved that even in darkness, humanity endures." Visitors often wondered about the statue beside it, an alien figure breaking free from bonds, They assumed it was symbolic. Only a few knew it depicted Cathara as Marcus first saw it, a prisoner who became a liberator, a weapon who chose to be more. In the end, that choice made all the difference. Two unlikely friends, bound by compassion and forged in suffering, had changed the course of history. Not through strength alone, but through the simple recognition that every sentient being deserved dignity, respect, and the freedom to choose their own destiny. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and terrors. But in one small corner, kindness had triumphed over cruelty, and the ripples continued to spread. Marcus and Cathara had proven that even the darkest prison could not contain the light of hope, and that sometimes the most powerful revolutions began with the smallest acts of grace. Their story became legend, inspiring countless others to look beyond surface appearances, to find common ground with the alien and unfamiliar. In a universe often divided by fear and prejudice, they stood as proof that connection was possible, that understanding could bridge any gap. And in quiet moments, when the weight of leadership grew heavy, Marcus would remember that first night. The scrape of claws on stone, eyes glowing in the darkness. The simple act of sharing that began it all. He'd look at Cathara, seeing not the living weapon others feared, but the friend who'd chosen to stand beside him. Together, they'd broken the chains that bound them. Together, they'd continue forward, building a future where no one would be imprisoned for speaking truth, where no creature would be judged solely by its appearance or origin. It wasn't a perfect galaxy they'd created, but it was a freer one. That was worth all the battles, all the losses, all the difficult choices. In the end, Marcus Chen and Cathara had proven that love and loyalty could overcome even the darkest purposes, that redemption was possible for anyone willing to choose it. Their revolution had succeeded not through force of arms, but through force of will, powered by the radical idea that every being deserved a chance to be more than their creators intended. In choosing each other, they'd chosen a better future for all. And in the depths of space, on 1,000 worlds, others looked to the stars and dared to dream of their own freedom, inspired by a human and his alien companion who'd refused to accept that tomorrow had to look like Shemar. Yesterday,